I bet you've seen a lot of stuff. You're in a good position to watch those graveside services and that kind of thing. Although you said you do some inside too. So do you play often inside, or are you always out at the cemetery?
It's probably mostly outside, but there are a lot of inside. Sometimes you do just inside and then just the funeral or graveside, and sometimes you do both, but not as much. I mean, this was originally just to play inside, and then they came back and said, "Oh, can you do the graveside too?" I said, "Oh, sure. It's going to be 32 degrees. I'm there."
32 degrees and I'm wearing a kilt. Thanks. Yes, that's wonderful. Yeah.
Coldest I've played was 16 with a strong, steady wind.
Oh man, if they ask, okay, yes, we'd want you to play outside and it's pouring rain. You don't want your pipes out in the rain, do you? Or is that okay?
Not ideal, but I do it.
Do you charge them extra? I mean,
No.
That seems like if you get out there and everything you're wearing and in your instrument, I mean, what if you have to replace a bunch of parts and whatever because it got too wet or something? I mean, is that a thing?
It dries out.
Okay. God bless you. You seem very chill about that.
It's just, what happens. I mean, the Oak Grove one comes to mind, and it was one of those driving sideways rains.
Yeah.
And it was about 40 degrees, and it was just bone-chillingly it was awful.
Wow.
But you just kind of get through it. You're as covered up as you can be while it was a military one, so they had the guns and and then you kind of break out of your crouch and do your thing when it's your time, and you just gut it out.
Oh, God bless you. I did a military funeral one time where it was snow, big giant snowflakes were coming down hard. It wasn't windy, but it was a very heavy snow, big wet snow. And at the time I was using a minister's manual, so it looks like I've got a Bible in front of me. Those aren't Bibles. The minister's manual has got services in it. So I'm reading a service out of a minister's manual, but the big giant white snowflakes are falling on the page. And so as I'm reading, I'm thinking I'm having a stroke or something because the words are disappearing, right? So entire words just disappear right in front of me. I'm like, what in the world? And I'm like, it's a snow on the white pages.
Got a squeegee.
Yes. Yeah. Welcome to Hey Chaplain. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. Hey Chaplain is the officer wellness podcast, which brings you expertise and wisdom from police officers and those adjacent to police officers from around the world. Today we have a returning guest, Jim Higgins. Jim plays the bagpipes and teaches police officers and firefighters to play the bagpipes for our ceremonies and parades. Jim often plays alongside them and is obviously an accomplished musician and expert in all things bagpipes related. I was pleased to get Jim to come in and talk to me about the bagpipes, the tunes that they play, and the police ceremonies, parades, and funerals that he participates in. In fact, when we recorded this interview, he was on his way home from a cemetery on a cold winter day. All the music that you hear in this episode was performed by Jim for the Hey Chaplain podcast, and if you want to learn more, stick around for the end of this episode. Here's Jim Higgins. Hello, Jim. How are you today?
Very good, Jared. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you back. It's wonderful. You're my favorite piper. And so, and I know several now. And so, you have, how long have you been teaching others to play the bagpipes?
Probably 50 years.
Oh, so before you were born, right?
Right. Yeah. Just a couple of years before.
So since you were a kid, you started learning and then you started teaching right away, right?
Started at 10. I was probably teaching by 15.
Oh, wow. You probably get a wide variety of people that are talented musicians and want to acquire one more instrument. And then I'm sure you also have people who are new to music.
Yes. And they think they want to play the bagpipes.
Right. Is there a word of encouragement you have to teach the novices?
Patience. The whole thing about starting out is everyone goes at their own pace, and it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. Some people pick things up quicker, and some people kind of struggle with things. And the bottom line is, if they stick with it and they really want to do it, at some point, it'll make sense. It'll click. And then that's when you have your moment of, satisfaction that you've gotten to a place where they can actually play what they wanted to do when they first started. And it's fun.
What does it look like when they give up? Do they just disappear? Do they just fade away? Or do they show up with their kilt and their bagpipe and they slam it down on the counter and say, I'm done with this?
Well, they probably don't get to the bagpipe part first. You start on the practice chanter, but it depends. In the band setting, a lot of people just stop coming or, fade away eventually. And it's pretty obvious if you have someone who just kind of keeps coming and they just never get anywhere. At some point, or you kind of suggest that maybe they think about taking a break or something. So it usually kind of works itself out.
Have you ever taken a piper and steered them toward the bass drum? Maybe this is more your speed.
No, but you just brought a memory back of lead drummer in the band I played with for a lot of years. He would teach snare. There's snare, tenor, and bass. Mm-hmm. So he would, the snare drummers are the hardest ones to kind of get up and going because it's just much more technical.
Yeah.
So you work with them, and then he goes, here's your tenor mallets. We joke about it. Tenor players are great. And actually some of the best tenor players are former snare players. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just kind of a funny, here are your tenor mallets.
What's in drumming rudiments, right? Or no?
Yeah, snare. Well, yeah, you have like doubles.
You have little patterns you need to learn to drum.
It's the fundamentals. Yeah, it's the fundamentals of playing scores.
Yeah. I grew up in a family of musicians, and I'm the least musical out of all of my mother, the piano player, my brother has perfect pitch. I mean, all these talented musicians around me. Mm-hmm. I'm self-aware enough to know that that's just not me. And so, yeah.
Well, my wife always says, somebody has to be the one to appreciate what you're doing.
That's right. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's funny. Let's talk about the Saddest song. So the bagpipes have a mournful sound, at least they can. Mm-hmm. Do you have a preference as far as the mood of the music you play? Would you rather play the happy tunes?
Well, there's a place for everything. I mean, it's something you appreciate, and it depends on the situation, obviously. But generally, you're trying to do something that's memorable. So if it's a funeral situation and somebody has a tune that they like, that you like to be able to accommodate that. And sometimes there's scores from movies. There's lots of different requests you get.
So there might be some inspirational stuff that's maybe patriotic or from a movie or something like that. Do you prefer that? Do you have like a personal preference?
I'd like to play something that means something to them. Like if a parent has died and they watched a certain movie. This has happened a number of times, Last of the Mohicans, where the Gael is basically the soundtrack throughout the movie.
Yeah.
It just means something to them. It connects them with their parent, and it's just a fond memory. And to have that as part of the final service is, you like to be able to provide something like that. And
I'm aware enough to know that my bagpipe knowledge is limited to basically what I hear at police memorial services. And so that also means that if you got the whole band together, you're probably playing the simplest tunes, the most common tunes that everybody can all play together.
Correct.
And so for me, if you had to pin me down right now and said, hey, we're going to have at your funeral, Jared, what do you want the pipers to play at your funeral? Well, I'm going to say Going Home, because that's the only one I know, or maybe Amazing Grace. Right. And so maybe those two would be the only ones that I know. What do you think is the best funeral bagpipe song?
Outside of what we just talked about, something memorable,
meaningful to that individual,
family, right? Yeah. That's probably the top on the list. But there are so many beautiful slow airs. So many, if you know there's tunes, and then there's songs that have just heart-wrenching, sad melodies. And, some of those
name a few for me. Maybe I'll cut in the actual tune afterward.
Sure. Well, like I said, the Gael was one, and that's I've done that several times. Murin's Funeral from Braveheart.
Oh, yes.
Fits the pipes perfectly, even though it's all alien pipes in the movie, but fits the pipes.
Explain that to me. The Braveheart movie, they used different bagpipes, right? It was a different instrument.
Yeah, they're pipes. They're just alien. They're the Irish. They have the 2 octaves, and it's just bellows blown. It's more of a quiet indoor instrument. You see it in folk bands and things like that. It's just not the loud Great Highland bagpipes.
All right.
Kind of a thing.
Do you play those?
Scales. I've played in a couple of very minor situations.
Okay.
I'm not an alien bagpipe player at all.
Different skill set or just preference?
It's similar. Like I said, it's bellows, so you don't blow into it. You use your other arm. You have one bag to squeeze and the other bag to fill it up.
Okay.
Which is, again, a whole different...
need a different level of coordination.
It's just all... I mean, it's funny when bagpipers start doing... And they have small pipes that have that as well. It's where you can actually play a bagpipe scale and tune and all.
Right.
But you find yourself holding your breath because you're sitting there filling it with your... and you're waiting to blow, and she's like, oh, yeah, bellows, I don't have... I can breathe.
I've watched you play several times. The only instrument I played was trumpet. And so for you to not be breathing with the notes, just my mind doesn't compute. And I've watched you several times, and I'm like, man, it just seems so non-intuitive. It breaks my brain that you're not blowing at the right. But that's the way pipes work. And
it's a bag, continuous flow.
So other great tunes that you think would be appropriate for funerals.
The Flowers of the Forest is a Scottish tune that's very sad and has a place in history. The Scottish defeat against the English in the 1500s. One that I've played a couple times recently is Sleep, Dearie, Sleep. It's the one that was played at Queen Elizabeth's funeral.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a pretty tune, minor key. It's just very, very sad. Fields of Athenry is an Irish tune that's just incredibly sad. If you know the lyrics, steals some corn to feed his family, gets thrown in jail, heading on down to Australia and all that. So there's just so many beautiful melodies and tunes. And of course, when you put the lyrics to them, it just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And there's local ones like Men of Erin from the Elders.
Okay.
That's an Irish, obviously, tune. There's just so many. Hector the Hero's another beautiful melody. Cradle Song. There's a ton of them. So everyone knows, like you were saying earlier, everyone knows Amazing Grace. So it's a beautiful tune, great message. I mean, grace.
Right.
How much better can it get, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty good theme to hit on, especially at the time of a death. That's
it. So it's just that's the one that gets requested most often. So almost anything else, just from a variety point of view, it's like there's so many beautiful tunes out there.
If someone says, okay, we'd love to have you play, just play whatever you want. And it's just you don't have a pipe band to be concerned about what they know or what they don't know. What's your top 3?
Well, Hector the Hero would be one. Swogan is another one. It's a real pretty melody. What would be the third? Well, it would depend on if it was Irish or Scottish. I'd lean towards a couple of Irish,
Okay.
Tooraloo, Men of Erin's another one for, again, I actually go for men and women too. Some seem like more of a lullaby, but.
So you're moving into that desire for it to be meaningful and appropriate, where your preference is going to kind of yield to the situation, the circumstances to some degree.
Yeah.
Because you want it to be right.
Yeah, I want it to be, connected with which parent, a father or a mother.
Yeah.
And Ireland or Scotland, if that means something. They obviously want a bagpiper for a specific reason, so you try to steer things one way or the other.
See, I'm connecting with this on so many levels because, again, at funerals, people care about their spirituality. They care about the religion, the faith of their parents or grandparents, that kind of thing, and their own faith if they have that. But I get requests for things that are not actually well matched. And so they want me to say something or read something or whatever. And it's like, if I can, I will kind of nudge them back into, back in bounds, where they don't know.
Right.
And I'm actually, the older I get, I'm much more tolerant of what music they select or what readings they want. I'm becoming a little more flexible, but I don't want to get up there and say something that if somebody's in the know, it's just wrong.
Right.
And so I sometimes do have to gently steer the family. Like, hey, I know you thought you wanted this, but how about we do this alternative instead? And yeah, that happens frequently.
Suggestions are nice.
Yes. Absolutely. You play at funerals and memorials frequently, but you also do other ceremonies and parades and other events. Do you have a favorite event or one that's meaningful to you apart from the ones related to death? Apart from memorials and funerals, do you have an event you'd like to play or a competition or something? Where do you like to play apart from those?
Ooh, well, I mean, I've competed all my life, and pipe bands. I love pipe bands. It's just a certain challenge to creating the sound and getting unison and just playing good music. It's exciting. I love it. And the Olympics of the bagpipe world is the World Pipe Band Championships in Glasgow. So I've been there with the local band that I grew up in a couple of times, and then I've also been there with a band from out of town. I played with 2010 through 13. City of Washington back east.
Okay.
So we went over once. So that's like, if you want to go to the Super Bowl or,
right.
The Olympics, that would be the Scottish.
What's that like do American bands do well? Do they not do well?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. They have 4 different grades, and then they have half of grades, like 3A, 3B, 4A, 4B, and then they also have a novice category where it's all 18 and under.
Okay.
Which are some of the really good bands.
Oh, really?
You wouldn't, I mean, you just
talented
think,
kids.
These are young bands, but those are really good bands.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So, and some of them are American. St. Thomas down in Texas puts out a phenomenal band. And so they've been doing that for decades.
I know I have listeners from Canada who are connected to pipe bands. In fact, a lot of them came in the first time you were on the show. Mm-hmm. Are Canadian pipe bands, do they represent well?
Oh, very well. Yeah, they've got a lot of...
Of course, you're obligated to say that because they're listening.
No, not at all. No, I mean, they have there's a lot of Americans that go up and play because they have a lot of great bands. There's 3 great ones in Toronto. I mean, they've got some on the Simon Fraser on the British Columbia. There's just bands it's phenomenal how many good bands they have there, whereas there's so many bands in America, but there are so few really upper level bands, and they don't always last real long. It's a difficult standard to maintain, and people like to travel and they bounce around, but
sure,
a lot of great, consistent, Canadian bands.
Where else might we find you piping?
Concerts are fun to play because you can script and put things together, do some fun stuff with small groups, and, a little bit above what you're going to get a whole big group to do. Or if you have an upper level band, you can do some really fun stuff with that. Playing stuff like with the opera, that's fun. I did the Silent Night opera a few years back with the KC.
Really?
Yeah. And that has such gorgeous music in it. It's just, but I was like the offstage bagpipe for the onstage actor playing the bagpipe.
Really?
So it was kind of fun because you had to kind of coordinate and show him how to do the moves. And
oh, how interesting!
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I wondered if the symphony ever calls and says, "Hey, we need a piper."
They have a couple of times. I played. They also did like an animated show where they play all the soundtracks, all these animated movies, and one of them was Brave about the Scottish princess.
Yeah.
So there's bagpiping in that, and so I got the opportunity to do that. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then, of course, fire departments, police departments. I saw you this summer at the FBI National Academy Associates Convention. I'm standing there, and they're going to do the whole opening ceremony thing, and you come walking in. I'm like, that's Jim. You walked right past me, and I was like, what? Yeah.
They had their normal guy apparently had some stuff come up, and they were searching, and they found me, and I was glad to help them out.
If people are making a request, what do you wish they would ask for instead of the common Amazing Grace and everything, which is fine, right. But what do you wish beyond? And I think when I started asking earlier, you went to, well, we want what's meaningful, what's appropriate, that kind of thing. Is there one that you just wish people knew existed, or you wish they knew the name of it?
Sure. A lot of the ones I've mentioned, those all kind of fall into that category.
But it's somewhere, one of these is so special and it has such good history. It's a shame that people are just ignorant. We've fallen down on teaching culture and that kind of thing. It's a crying shame that they just don't know this song, or they don't know the name of it.
Well, I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that.
Oh, you're just too shy to say that people are ignorant. I'm not.
No.
I know they don't know.
You're going to get me into trouble here. I'm just drawing a blank. I mean, it's like when someone asks you your favorite, it's like, there's too many good, whatever it is you're asking about. It's like, I can't pin it down to one.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people who know a lot of these songs.
Yeah.
And so your circles are different than my circles. There are a lot of folks I know that they've never, if they saw a bagpipe, they just didn't engage. They just weren't paying attention. They didn't think to ask, well, what's the name of that tune that I hear in the Irish or the Scottish movies? It just doesn't ring a bell, and frankly, I was in that category until I became a police chaplain. And now I'm doing these first responder events where there's pipes at the ceremonies. And I'm like, well, what is that tune? And I got curious, which is how I got talking to you. Mm-hmm. Everybody already knew Amazing Grace, so they came pre-equipped with that information. And then they learned, oh, that one's Going Home, or another one that you guys always play a pair of songs together at like graduation ceremonies and promotion ceremonies and that kind of stuff. What are those?
Marches, you mean, going in and out?
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of times it'll be Wings Around Tree, and then Castle Dangerous is another one we play on the exit. So
what do you wish people would know or request or put into the program?
Well, for Slow Hours, I'm really fond of Hector the Hero. It's just a really pretty setting, and Stuart Little from Inveraray District put it in their medley 2015, I think, at the World, and it's just when you hear something so beautifully done and so perfectly played, it just makes an impression and makes a good tune even that much more special. But again, you've got all sorts of other, as far as just favorite tunes, it's just hornpipes, jigs, reels. It's impossible. I have a lot of favorites, I guess I should say.
Okay. Let's do some funeral stories. You get to stand off a short distance, which puts you in a good position to observe. And so I'm sure you've seen all kinds of things. That's too generic. I was going to ask, what's the most unexpected thing you saw at a funeral? That's too broad. Now, has anybody stumble into an open grave or anything, have you? Yeah.
No, not that bad.
There's a classic joke, and there's two different versions of it. One is a young preacher trying to find a country,
there's a piper trying to find
right, or it's a piper, right? And they finally think they find it, and they do their thing, either preach the sermon or play the music. And the men, with the backhoe, they stand solemnly. And that's the most beautiful word I've ever heard said over an open septic tank. Yeah,
that's right. Never had someone come up and do that.
Yeah, that's right. Have you ever missed a funeral because the cemetery was just too far out in the sticks and you couldn't find it?
No, but I probably came close a couple times. But no, I've always managed to find them. I got a little hairy, a couple of them, but
you got Rand McNally open on the front seat trying to.
Well, the problem is not having a cell phone with you.
Yeah.
You just try to write down the directions, and sometimes it doesn't really match reality, and you find yourself unable to go the way you thought, have to kind of improvise a little bit.
Sure. And those military cemeteries, a lot of times they stop you at the gate. And you can't just come running in late. And so if you ever been like, no, I'm the piper, I've got to be there. Yeah.
No, I always try to get going early just in case something happens. And every once in a while something has. You run into traffic or an accident. And
okay, well, you're Mr. Punctual, but you often play with others. And I know musicians, not all musicians are punctual.
Correct.
So give me an example of a time where you were supposed to have another piper, a drummer, whoever, and they got there at the last second, or they were late, or...
It was actually at one of the local graduations, police graduations in Memorial Hall. Oh, he said he'd be here. Okay, well, he'll probably show up as we're getting ready to go on. Exactly what happened. Overslept and came walking on in as we're standing there in the chute ready to go.
Oh, wow.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So he was fine. I mean, he knows.
Yeah. So
it happens.
So how quick, if the piper's dressed and how quick can you get things assembled and be ready to go? I mean, they walking in, getting the drones all squared away, like walking in the door?
Well, you can do it quickly, but you can't do it in front of people because you have to strike up and play and then do some tuning and fidgeting and get the drones, set up. But it could be done pretty quickly. But if you're already kind of out there, standing in front of people ready to go, if it was 5 minutes earlier and you walked in the room where we were just getting ready to go out, you can take a minute and kind of get things settled and then go out together. But not when you're literally standing ready to go for the performance.
I feel like I witnessed this. I think
you might have.
I think I might have been there because I vaguely remember there was supposed to be another person, and maybe they just showed up, and maybe they didn't go out with you because they just showed up too late or something. I think I might have witnessed that, but yeah,
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. If it's middle July or August and you're wearing an outfit that's at least partly wool,
a lot of wool. Usually you lose the jacket unless, well, you can play for a short amount of time in anything. But, if it's just blistering 98 degrees and
high humidity,
it's just, I'll go without a jacket if I'm going to be playing a lot.
Does that affect the instrument?
No.
Okay.
Just the person playing it.
Okay.
I mean, normally the pipes like humidity and heat, so they respond well in the summer. And sweating, that's just part of playing the bagpipes. So
okay.
I mean, everything feels great when you're all warmed up and hot. It doesn't bother me at all. I'd prefer that to 16 with a stiff 30-mile-an-hour wind,
right.
Any day of the week.
Right.
It's just cold. It's mostly the fingers. When it gets to the point where you can't feel the holes on the chanter, bad things start happening.
Every now and again, I will get so wrapped up in the ceremony at a funeral or memorial service where it's just I am moved emotionally and I am very in the moment. And that's when we have the gun salute. And I have been startled. You would think, as many funerals as I've been to, I would never be startled by a gun salute. And I have been like jolted out of the moment by that. Have you ever had a big surprise come get you at a service?
I'm usually ready for the guns because I'm over with them.
That's true.
Trumpet, guns. So I'm kind of part of that. I make sure I'm not in the line of fire kind of a thing. But no, you make sure because that all happens, one right after the other. So you're kind of in that grouping.
Do you wear earplugs outside?
Not usually.
Okay. So you don't even have the ear protection that sometimes the rifle team they'll have ear protection in.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're standing right next to them,
if I'm that close, I'll either put one finger in that's facing them, or I did play a funeral just a month ago where we had to regroup and get close. So I actually did put in the two earplugs because I didn't want to stand there with my finger in my ear.
Sure, yeah.
I was right in front of the family, so it just wouldn't have been a good look.
Right.
But I also didn't want to have guys volleying right into my ears.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. I did have one funny thing happen. Speaking of booms, something that shocked me was at a Highland game in the Denver games, and I didn't realize that they had this cannon up on this hill behind where we were warming up. And I had my back to them, so I didn't even see the cannon. And they just let off a round, and I about swallowed my blowpipe. I mean, that startled me.
Yeah. Now, I saw you rescue the moment at a ceremony not long ago. The bugler had an electronic bugle. Yeah. You have a legit bugle that you actually play, and then you have the ones that project a recording.
Yeah, there's a little device in the bell.
Yeah, so they hit play, and they mime playing the bugle as it plays taps.
Correct.
And there was a malfunction. And I go to a funeral, especially if I'm officiating, I am always ready for what's plan B, what's the contingency if this doesn't work. I've just done enough weddings and funerals that I know things don't always go according to plan. So I'm always prepared. Mm-hmm. And I saw the officer struggle and thought, this isn't going to work. And I looked at you. And you didn't see me, but I was watching you, and you rescued the moment.
I mean, I've seen enough of the trumpets. I know, that you turned on, then you hit the button, you have like a 3-second delay, and so when something doesn't happen, you kind of go, oh, well, they didn't hit the button or something. But when the officer first did it, she pushed the button, and all I heard was a huh. And I immediately knew there was no battery there.
Yep.
It gave its last right then and there. And she tried a couple more times. It was kind of obvious nothing was going to happen. I just went ahead and struck up and started playing. And the funny thing was the guys I was with thought I was going into the next tune that they were going to, because I
saw you wave them off.
Yeah, because they started striking up too, like we were playing Amazing Grace.
Nope, I got this.
Kind of not yet.
Yeah.
So they didn't know I knew it. So I just, they wondered why I was striking.
But that's the difference. You were paying attention and watching, and you were ready to employ the contingency.
Yeah.
And you were going to play taps instead of the bugler playing taps. And so I appreciate, as someone who does these ceremonies when I'm the one in charge, I wasn't that day, I was just an observer, but man, I appreciated that you were able to just jump in and you were on top of it and ready to go.
Yeah, it was nice to be able to be there at that moment. kind of kept it going.
You've already mentioned going to Scotland. What's the most unusual place that your bagpipes have taken you?
Well, I guess to the White House.
Okay.
That would be probably one of the most...
Yeah. Played at the White House?
How'd I get here? Yeah. It was when I was playing with the band from back east, the city of Washington. The first year, actually, in 2010, they got an invite to play, and Dan, the pipe major, put out an email. Anyone interested? Boom.
Yes.
I'll go. So, it was up taking the 6:00 flight out that morning, getting there and doing it, and going to bed and getting the next 6:00 flight out to come back home the next morning. So.
What president you play for?
That was Obama.
President Obama. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yep.
What's the best reaction you've ever gotten from a crowd? Has it been at a parade or something like that where they're just like, oh, they're just eating this up?
Probably concerts where you've got a crowd coming that knows.
Okay. They've come to hear.
Yeah.
This is going to be a concert of Scottish music or Irish music. And
I mean, your St. Patrick's Day parades are always kind of a big. As soon as you stop, the whole crowd goes up. I mean, weekends, you kind of get a little different mix, but it's always an enthusiastic crowd, I should say.
What's the most ambivalent crowd you ever had?
It wasn't ambivalent, but it's the form. So we used to practice at Marine Corps place, and we would do their dinner every year. Well,
okay.
They don't clap. So every time you're playing this set, you're doing all this stuff, and you stop, pin drop silence. I mean, it's just like, okay. I mean, it was weird to just have that kind of non-reaction, but it wasn't like
it was appropriate to them.
Right. It was how that happens.
Did anybody warn you?
No.
You had no idea they weren't going to clap?
No idea. Not the first time.
Okay.
So we figured it out, but it was like, it just feels, you're just not expecting nothing.
Right. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah, it was an adjustment.
Can you think of any other unusual things that happened to you? Any, boy, that didn't go like we planned.
So that's funny. Yeah, a lot of band stuff doesn't go like you expected. We did a parade once in Lee Summit, and for some reason or we ended up not being able to put a bass drummer out there. And you would think, well, this group has been playing for, years, decades, whatever. You got a snare line. What?
Talented musicians. You think they could all keep time?
You all know the tunes. You've been playing them 100 times. It's like we never played the bagpipes before. It's like,
no.
There's a downbeat here somewhere, people. It was just all the way through the parade. It was like, come on, let's.
Yeah.
It was just, it gave you a glimpse into just how important what most people think is the least important instrument, which is the heartbeat of the band, basically.
Yeah.
If you don't have a bass, it just seems to come unglued.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I bet the bass in particular really gets through the noise of the bagpipe is a very loud instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thump of the bass drum probably really helps, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just this great big pulse coming through the ranks every downbeat. It makes a huge difference.
That's good. I like that story on a couple levels. That's good. All right. You ever had a piper that he was on the wrong song and you couldn't make him stop?
Yes. I'll go home and I tell my wife some of these, things that happen at events, and it's just kind of like this. Oh, it's just, you think you've seen it all, and then you go to something and you're playing, and the person next to you you just kind of look over and is like, what are you playing?
Yes.
It's not what the rest of us are playing.
Do you have a way? Because I've watched you get the group started, and you're calling out the timing. You guys all strike up at about the same time, and you have a shorthand within your group of how to communicate. But once you're playing, is there a way to get somebody to stop or to back off, or are there hand signals? Can you kick them in the shin? Is there something you can do?
Well, usually you try to just kind of look and draw attention to the fact that something's going wrong.
Yeah.
But outside of, taking your hand off, which you need to keep on the chanter to play the right tune, you really can't do a whole lot more than that.
Sure.
I mean, you can kind of shake your head or kind of give a funny look, but
right.
It's,
Oh, I guarantee you, the one that's playing the wrong song, I guarantee you that they got their eyes closed and they're just in the moment.
Focus.
Yes. Focus on the wrong song. Right.
Wrong tune.
That's funny.
That is good. Yeah. I remember doing a funeral this past summer where he was a baseball player. He died young, had a heart condition, but he was a good baseball player, played in college. And so I played everyone out of the church, and the cemetery was behind the church. So then I played, once everyone kind of came out, and I led them all to the graveside, and they did their service. And usually you play something at the end. And again, traditionally it's Amazing Grace. Well, since he was a baseball player, I went ahead and played Take Me Out to the Ball Game, which created an actual audible laugh from the crowd because they all obviously knew and loved him and knew he was big into baseball. So that's always fun. Again, to just be able to put a nice touch on something that makes it personal, more touch. Special moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm always looking for that. The kind of church that I'm a minister at, we're not strongly liturgical, and so I have quite a bit of freedom about what's included in a funeral or what I present in a funeral or a wedding also. And so I have some flexibility there, and finding a way to personalize it just the right way. That's the chef's kiss. That's what I'm aiming for. And I don't always hit it. I don't always find just the right thing to say or the right thing to read, but I love it when it all comes together.
It is nice. Makes a good moment.
Jim, thank you so much for coming in today. I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do and what you contribute, especially to police culture, but just generally, I appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I love working with teaching guys how to play, and especially something memorable or meaningful like the police services and ceremonies. It's an honor.
I want to thank Jim for coming in and recording with me. I hope that you picked up on one of his personal traits. Jim is surprisingly patient and accommodating, eager to do the right thing, and very conscientious of others, including his very clear instruction to me that a bagpipe plays a tune, not a song. A song is something you sing. And yet I called it a song throughout the entire interview, repeatedly. Sorry about that, Jim. Make sure that when you request a tune from your bagpiper that you actually call it a tune, or an air, or a march, but not a song. Getting the jargon right does actually matter. Now, if you're interested in learning more about the tunes that bagpipers play, I had a recording session with Jim and recorded about 10 or 12 tunes, and I'm going to put those in a bonus episode. The goal being that you would be familiar with at least a handful of these bagpipe tunes, and you would know their names and maybe even a little bit of background trivia about them. That's next week in a bonus episode. Please remember that this show is free for everyone because of those supporters who are quietly helping behind the scenes. If you want to help this show reach more cops, chaplains, and other first responders around the world, please follow the link in the episode description to support the show. The views expressed here are the personal views of the host and our guests and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain, and as always, pray for peace in our city.